with AI in particular, we're entering an age of entrepreneurship. It's never been easier to set up a business. You can have an idea, you can give a few prompts, and you can actually create an MVP within a day. And so it's been easier than ever to test ideas out.
Rather than thinking about, can I replace these people with AI? It's like, how can we get more productive using these people and getting them to use AI?
A lot of the boring, repetitive, time-laborious tasks are done by AI, so you can focus on winning new customers or managing your team or coming up with a new strategy or whatever it is. We should all be utilizing it. We are all going to have to be in the race. We're going to have to use these tools. So don't be afraid of it. Just use these tools. Now, just try and build things, iterate, create, even if it's just a passion project, something that you love that's never going to make money. Show that you know how to conceptualize something, build it, and manage it, because that skill set's going to be valuable for you in your careers.
Guys, first and foremost, thank you for braving the weather. I mean, seriously, I wasn't sure when I looked out the window how many people would turn up, but obviously Mark's a massive draw.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. I know some of you guys are here for the first time, so and just for you guys who are here for the first time, so Banyan Workspace, co-working space, event space, we host these podcasts about once a month, live podcasts. It all started off actually as panel discussions that were never recorded, and then people asked us why we weren't recording them. And so we've tried to keep it true to its original intention of being with a live audience. It is a live podcast. We do not expect you to sit in pin drop silence. So, you know, if you have to leave early, if you have to get up for anything, please don't stress about that. We will have audience question and answers at the end, though. So if you can hold questions till the end, and we will have a mic going around. So with that mic, we can catch your questions. And we have a wireless mic today for the first time. Amazing. Upgrading and moving in the right. No boom mic.
Just around everywhere.
So we do want to catch your questions. And you know, your job tonight, honestly, is to ask the questions that I forget to ask. Because there's obviously going to be things as we go through this that I miss. With that, buckle up. I have a feeling it's going to be a long one. Mark, thank you for being here. I've been really, really looking forward to this discussion. One of the things that strikes me from our earlier meeting is that you do a lot. Before we dive into what you do, I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on this idea that you should focus on one thing as an entrepreneur versus kind of spreading out a little bit more, increasing your surface area and giving yourself a little bit more chance of winning and hitting it big. How do you kind of think about that as an entrepreneur?
It's a very good question. And I think the truth is, you're right. You can't do everything at the same time and give an equal weighting to everything that you're doing. So you do have to prioritize it.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is, you know, you think of everything out of 100, right? You need to be giving obviously 100 out of 100 to one thing, but the truth is you can't. But I will prioritize certain things for a period of time, particularly at the beginning when they need all of your attention. And I guess for me personally, the one thing that I've constantly done throughout my career is I've always had co-founders. And it's been a big part of my philosophy of how I build companies and how I became an entrepreneur. Is everything I do, I have at least one, if not two co-founders. And so they obviously are sounding boards. They can complement me. But also if I've got areas where perhaps I'm weaker, areas or blind spots perhaps that I have, they will typically come in and fill that. And so what it means is, yes, I can spread myself a little bit wider because I know there's always going to be one or two other individuals that are actually completely focused on that. And when my attention is with it, I am completely focused on that task and that organization. And I would say if you look at it in the career, there have been periods of a number of years where take one business, get that business to profitability, stability, and then from that foundation, you can look to do other things. And that's kind of how it's grown over the last 14 years.
That's super interesting. I think that the co-founder piece fascinates me because I've ummed and ahed about this a lot over my career. I've had a co-founder, it didn't work out in one of my businesses. But the idea that you have other people around you that you can rely on is something that I've leaned into really, really, really heavily. And I was fortunate that when I started off, I had a little bit of capital to bring in some expertise around me. And that sort of gave me the comfort level to do a little bit more than what an ordinary first-time founder may do. But maybe tell us a little bit about your story, because I think for people here who don't know what your journey's been, from, I guess you were born here,
Yeah.
to what you're doing today in like 5 minutes. Can you give us your sort of 5-minute journey?
Sure. So look, for myself, I was born in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
grew up here, went to the ESF system as you did as well. My parents had actually come to Hong Kong in the 60s. So my dad came here as 19 years old. My mum was 11. So they were quite young when they came to Hong Kong. So this has always been home to me. I started off working 19 years ago, and I basically fell into being a headhunter. Like most people, when they're headhunters, will tell you that. They kind of fell into it. And I realized that I had a natural aptitude for that. You know, it utilized networking, obviously sales, being able to manage multiple tasks, and learning quite quickly. And so within about 5 years or so, had done quite well in this business. And I was working for a British firm, and I saw some good years. And then the global financial crisis hit. And at quite a young age, I was about 24, 25 years old, I saw the company go from 14 headcount down to 4. And we were told, the other 4 were told, you eat what you kill. You guys are on your own or you'll be out of a job in 3 months. So, we're here in Hong Kong, headquarters are in London. We had to very quickly go out there and find business. And so one of my other colleagues, who was actually now a business partner of mine, he went out, he's fluent in Cantonese and Mandarin. And he won a lot of clients out of mainland China primarily. And for me, I went out and started speaking to multi-billion-dollar hedge funds, proprietary trading companies that were kind of emerging at that time. And actually, the two of us then became the biggest billers in the office. We were able to stabilize things. And then they grew the team again to about 12, 13 individuals. But they kept dangling the carrot in front of us of equity. And after a couple of years, we realized, why are we doing this for someone else when we could be doing this for ourselves? And so that's kind of what began that journey. It's at quite a young age, we were pushed out there and you basically said, sink or swim. And so kind of getting over that fear of rejection quite early in my career helped a lot. And so I started off building a company called Silverstrand 14 years ago, which was a financial services headhunting company that mainly works with the buy side. And, the thing about recruitment is it has low barriers to entry. You can quite quickly generate a bit of money. But the very good recruiters do stand out from the majority of them. And so, we did quite well. And this is what I was talking about earlier. That kind of gave me a foundation after about 4 or 5 years to kind of do everything that came afterwards. And so this is then when the entrepreneurial journey really kind of picks up some pace. Okay. I set up another recruitment company about 4 years in, doing ESG, sustainability in the built environment.
So it was just different areas.
It was it's still recruitment, but a completely different space with a different co-founder and partner. And the difference with that business is we started to have more contractors. And if anyone's been a contractor or knows much about that space, is it takes up a lot of cash flow.
So these people are on your payroll.
Exactly. So you hire them and then you outsource them to other organizations.
Okay.
And so it's a good business. It's sticky recurring revenue, but it takes up a lot of cash flow in the business. And so this is kind of when the journey changes somewhat. So about 9 years ago, I had these 2 recruitment companies and I wanted to get some kind of a facility to finance these contractor books. And as a small company, even if a small profitable company, banks at that time didn't really know what to do. There was no real physical assets to have as collateral for a loan. And so I said, well, okay, I'll do this myself. And so with the network I'd made as a headhunter with, hedge fund traders, portfolio managers, I reached out to a couple I knew and I said, let's build a business that's going to provide loans to all of these recruitment firms initially that want to build contracting books so that they can compete with the biggest firms on the planet like Hayes, Randstad, and Michael Page. And we basically will finance all of them. And so this is when, there's a bit of a change. I went from being a bootstrapped entrepreneur to a startup founder. And the way I differentiate it is startups, you raise external capital. You have equity investors, you have debt investors. So you have all these other stakeholders involved in the business. And with that company, Zettel, that's what we did. We raised capital and we got going with a dozen recruitment entrepreneurs that I knew in Hong Kong and Singapore. And so they could build their contractor. So they could do the exact same thing that I wanted to do. Okay. So I saw a problem. I wanted to solve it. And I knew that there was always other recruitment entrepreneurs who wanted to solve it too. So, we got them to sign letters of intent before when it was just an idea. And to their credit, they supported me in that. And when we went going, they all said, this is great. Can you get access to more capital? We want to hire more contractors. And that's what sort of started that journey. And, over the years that came afterwards, we raised, more equity capital, more debt capital. We grew into Malaysia. We grew into the Philippines. we really expanded the book quite a bit. And, that was a really exciting, journey to go through. It had its troubles as well. In 2023, interest rates went up and we kind of saw what was happening there. And we had to kind of pivot and adjust. And, for us, we could see that the key thing would be to cut costs. And by cutting costs, we could get the business then to cash flow break even. And that's basically what we did over the next couple of years. We did that. We were quite early into AI transformation as well, and bringing in AI agents for marketing, for customer service, building in.
What year was that?
This would have been 2023 to 2024. So quite early, right? It was about 2023 when all these LLMs came on the market.
Yeah.
So we were quite early to incorporate those, and built all sorts of automations. And that kind of helped the business go from, we probably had, double-digit headcount down to, mid-single digits. But we were able to offer the same service. And if anything, it just became more efficient. And so that business got to cash flow break even in 2024, became profitable last year. And then last year, I became a non-executive director of that company, which brings me up to what I've been doing over the last year. So obviously, I had all this experience as a recruiter. I had this journey in fintech where, we'd raised to investors. We built in a whole bunch of automations. And I was looking at what I'd spent the majority of my career doing, which was recruiting and headhunting. And I could see how AI was just going to transform this industry, mostly for the good, but sometimes for the worse as well. And I could see where there was an opportunity to build a business from the ground up that would utilize AI, but also would solve some of the problems that AI is also creating, which if anybody here has been involved in looking for a job or has been involved in hiring people, they would have seen this issue, which is the AI-generated CV applying to the AI-generated job description via the AI agent. So if every job seeker is putting their CV into an LLM to try and game the job description to get an interview, what they're all trying to do is they're bypassing the filters.
Yeah.
And so as an employer, you're seeing 300 to 400% more applicants than ever before. You cannot physically get through them anymore. And for job seekers, they get no feedback because they're applying for all these roles and they're one of many thousands. And so the hiring process is kind of broken down with AI. And so what we're doing with Preferred, which is the HRTech company, is yes, we utilize AI because you need it to move fast. Then what we've got in our network is what we call human verified referrals. So we call it a human circuit breaker. You know people in your network. We have roles on our platform. You are onboarded. We do KYC to verify you're a real person and what you know. You can refer individuals in your network based on the roles on our platform. And if they're successfully hired, you receive half of our fee. We're quite generous. So what it does is it puts trust back into the process because you give, in essence, a testimonial on why you know somebody and why they're good for a role. That person, then their information is analyzed by us with their cover letter, with alternative data. And then this is where it gets kind of cool. We have AI agents that then contact the job seeker. They can pull extra information or signals, as we call them. And then that all goes into a score that we present to the client. So the idea is we verify that you're a real person, why you're good for a role. And then by the time the employer has seen it, we've gone through basically 3 levels of vetting. So it saves them time and money and finds them more accurate candidates. And for the job seekers, we can give them some accountability. We can't guarantee you're going to get every job offer, for every role you apply for, but we can say that you'll get some feedback or you'll know very quickly if you're out of the running for a position because it's the lack of communication from our research, which is what job seekers hate the most. Just not knowing, right? And they get demoralized by applying to 100 roles and hearing nothing. Any feedback, some feedback can help a person to grow. And that's kind of the idea behind it.
Amazing. But you're not running all of these businesses now.
So I'm a non-executive director for Zettel. I have been since last year. And then for Silverstrand, I have a co-founder that basically is the main director of that business. And then Preferred, I am the CEO of that business. And then one was sold 2 years ago. And
the work away from work?
The work away from work.
You have a lot of other things going on in your life.
So
I'm not even talking about family. I'm talking about all the other stuff you do.
The other stuff. So I'm a big believer that you got to pay it forward. You know, I think you have to give back to society. And one of the things that I did with my brother, actually, and a few other individuals is created something called the Eurasian Society 5 years ago, which is a non-profit that is set up to raise awareness, education, and opportunity for Eurasians and ethnic minorities. So there's actually a Eurasian Association in Singapore, which has been going for 110 years, which was part of the inspiration for us. And Hong Kong historically had not really had that. To be Eurasian historically had been a bit of a taboo, actually, given a lot of colonial reasons. And so we wanted to basically create a community, in essence, of individuals that were like-minded, but also quite different. And what's interesting, what we found about, Eurasians in particular, but third culture kids really is what we're talking about, is that even though you can be from different places, you can have all sorts of different ethnic mixes, there is some kind of a shared identity that a lot of third culture kids have, particularly if they grew up in Hong Kong. And there was this desire to kind of have that kind of community. And so, it's great to do something with my brother, it's fantastic. But also there's a lot of other individuals who are very passionate about that. So yeah, that's probably when I'm not doing my normal work, that's the other work that's happening.
So I'm curious, with all of this going on, one of the things that I assume is it's not just the hours in the day that are difficult, but it's finding the mind space to do everything and be able to jump from one thing to the other. Because my guess is that every day there's a fire somewhere or an opportunity somewhere, and you've got to take care of the fire and you want to jump on the opportunity. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think, context switching. It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And it is something you can develop over time. It's a skill. So people have different ways of doing this, right? Mindfulness is important. And what I try and do is, rather than jump straight into another task, just take a pause and take a moment, take a deep breath, and then just try and focus yourself on what you need to do, and then turn and face it, right? It's the same thing how people get notifications on their phone and they're constantly reacting to it.
Yeah.
But actually, if you can just learn to put your phone face down and just engage with it when you need to, right? You can give yourself the headspace to focus on what's right in front of you now. And then I guess the other thing is obviously prioritizing as well. It is a skill to learn how to prioritize things.
You answer pretty quickly.
Huh?
You answer WhatsApps pretty quickly.
Yeah, I am pretty good at responding because you happen to catch me when I'm responding to WhatsApps. But I don't have it on my laptop. I definitely don't do that.
You don't have your WhatsApp on your laptop?
I don't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, I do respond quickly.
It's fascinating because my guess is that you love it, and you love the jumping from one thing to the other. It makes you feel alive. And
I love to build, and I love to sort of do that 0 to 1, 0 to 2.
Yeah.
I find it super inspiring and not just for myself personally, but speaking to other entrepreneurs. I love to talk to entrepreneurs, kind of like what you're doing. I think it's great, right? You get to learn their processes, what works, maybe their failures, and that can be quite inspiring because when people are passionate about what they do, whether it works or not, they were passionate about it for a time, and that can be quite inspiring, I would say. And yeah, that's where it comes from. It's been there for 14 years.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. Good ideas can be found anywhere, but finding them amongst other entrepreneurs is something that I really love diving into.
Yeah, and look, the truth is, with Zettle, it was an SME lender to entrepreneurs, basically. The clients were privately owned firms. So again, every day speaking to entrepreneurs was part of it.
I'm curious how you sort of, do you think of yourself as kind of a lifelong learner?
Yeah, growth mindset.
Yeah, that's
my wife would tell me.
Yeah, I heard that when my kids were in primary school. I rolled my eyes at first, and now I've kind of really embraced it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting that you went from bootstrapping a business to saying, okay, my next business, I'm going to raise funds. Then you found the difficulty with raising funds and thought, well, here's an opportunity for me to make it easier for other people to raise funds. So I'm going to set up a company to help people raise funds. And I kind of feel like that's kind of that thing of seeing the opportunity and not being able to resist it sometimes, or wanting to try different things. I'm going back into I wouldn't say co-founder, but almost like a partnership model with my next business. Because I want to see if I can make this work and for my team and my new partner coming on board. And I kind of feel there's something that's in our sort of DNA, or I don't know if it was there at birth, but it's something we've kind of developed that makes you want to keep trying different things and moving on that journey. Does that resonate with you? Is that kind of how you see your journey? Because when I read about your journey and I heard it from you, I felt you were jumping from one thing to the next as you were learning and as you were going, and saying, oh, that's interesting. I had to solve that problem. Maybe I can solve that for someone else.
Yeah, I'd say, look, if there is a pattern between everything that came, because there's a link between one and the other. It wasn't as if something completely separate occurred. There was sort of an issue encountered with one business, which kind of led to the development of the next. And that's probably, actually, when I look at it, that's probably the trend that goes between them. There's a link between all of them. And perhaps there can be like synergies that actually benefit all of them in different ways. So I'd say that that's certainly a part of it. You were talking a bit about partners and founders. So I'd say, look, one thing that people should keep in mind is that everyone has a different personality and a personality type, right? Some people play better than others than other people do, right?
Yeah.
So you have to also work out what's right for you. Sometimes being a solopreneur is the right thing to do, and sometimes just having one co-founder is fine, and sometimes having 5 or 6 makes sense. So there isn't sort of one rule that works. I would say that people need to understand what do they like, what do they enjoy, and if they are going to bring a co-founder into what they do, you need to spend a lot of time getting to know them. And that's probably one of the lessons I've learned over the years is, a co-founder is basically like a marriage, right? You're going to spend days, weeks, months, maybe years with that person. And so
Did you sign a prenup?
Yeah, well, you should, right? A founder's agreement.
Yeah.
A founder's agreement.
Yeah.
But the truth is, right, you're going to have arguments. And, obviously at the beginning, it's a honeymoon period. Everyone's very passionate about what they're building, but you are going to have arguments and you're going to have a disagreement. And actually, in a way, it's good to get some of those early because then you can find out if you are able to find a compromise. And I think that's something that people forget, right? It's sort of, I need to win this argument or that person loses the argument. But actually a compromise is sometimes the best way. Or if it really is you have the best idea, you need to convince them of that. And that takes time and it takes thought and planning. And not everybody maybe has the patience to do that. So I think it's also important to know your personality type. And that will also then drive what it is you should do, if you're going to be an entrepreneur yourself.
One of the things that jumps out at me is the idea of combining sort of different but complementary skills. Sort of leaning into your recruitment background and then what you learned with tech and bringing those two things together. We're doing something similar here now. I mean, Banyan, the workspace we're in now, exists because we had a shitty experience somewhere else and thought that there's an opportunity to do this better. And one of the things this business is based on is hospitality.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to have this discussion internally about how do we bring hospitality to our wholesale spirits business. Because I just feel like these complementary skills that are maybe don't exist in an industry, you bring it from one industry into another, and it can be massively powerful when you do it. And I kind of see that in your story. Was it intentional, or is it something that just kind of happened, that I've got these sort of tech skills, I've got this recruitment background, I can marry the two together and create a new and different business?
Yeah, I mean, I think even beforehand, with Zettle, again, I could see that there were platforms out there that wanted to provide trade finance, or they wanted to provide lending against, hard goods.
Yeah.
But they weren't really set up to provide this kind of asset-light financing. And that was exactly it. I knew that there was a need for it. The question is, can we find a way to deliver a product at a cost that is acceptable to these organizations? And so that was kind of how it came about. And there wasn't really many other organizations that were doing that in Hong Kong 9 years ago. There really wasn't. There's a few more on the street now. So that definitely informed it. And then I think, as all of those sort of tech skills kind of were added as skills, with Prefer, the idea was, okay, I know that the recruitment industry is quite a legacy-based industry. The last major innovation was LinkedIn 20 years ago. And, LinkedIn was innovative and it changed the game for a lot of people for about a decade or so. But, even then, LinkedIn changed, it got acquired by Microsoft for a lot of money. And you started to see these changes happening, and it's one of these things. We're all on LinkedIn. We all kind of have to use it. But I don't know many people that love LinkedIn anymore. And maybe there was a time that they did.
It's changed.
It's changed, right? The algorithm, we know it has changed. And the service is getting worse. So I think that, seeing what's going on out there and knowing it can be better, that's kind of the inspiration, right? And that's probably where you're coming from as well, bringing hospitality to a different industry, right? And then that changes the service offering and then it creates the demand. And then that was the idea with Preferred, taking tech and trying to change how people source careers and jobs and obviously find talent as well.
You're also spotting and leaning into trends, though, that you're seeing. And
I'd say so, yeah.
I find that interesting because I think that as you do this over a period of time, it kind of comes to you a little bit intuitively and subconsciously that you kind of see this path. So I'm curious, when you see something and you can't shake that this is a really interesting opportunity that I want to dive into, what do you do next?
So look,
because you've been through this a few times.
Yeah. I mean, look, Preferred, What I do is whenever there's an idea, I collate all those ideas in a document, in an app, whatever it is. Collate all your thoughts, any articles, any brainstorms you have, put it down and write it down somewhere. And for example, Preferred, I first wrote down the notes for Preferred in 2019. So in 2019, and I thought, if AI got there, we didn't need to have teams of recruiters. We could get individuals to refer people in their networks. Okay, people have tried that before. It hasn't really worked. Why? Or they weren't engaged actively enough. So I'd already kind of put that down, 7 years ago. But I didn't do anything with it because I was building Zettel at the time, and I needed my full attention because it was 0 to 1 and 0 to 2. So you talk about this already. How do you kind of divide your time between them?
Yeah.
Just because I had the idea doesn't mean I'm going to go off and do it. And that takes a lot of patience to be able to sit there and be like, well, okay, that's in the back of my mind maybe, but I'm doing this right now. I've made commitments to investors and partners and friends and family. I've got to focus myself on this. But, it's always there itching in the back of your mind. And I think that that's something people also have to think about is you can start writing these ideas down right now. And a lot of people do. They'll journal them. They'll have it all stored somewhere. And that's great. And you can collate all the ideas and come up with a plan. And then when you feel that you're ready, then you go and you start to build it. And sometimes people maybe jump in a bit too soon. And that can also be a risk, right? Because once you take that step, then there's a whole bunch of other risk that comes with it.
Yeah.
Financial risk, emotional, all sorts.
It's interesting because I kind of think about the difference between, doing plans, checking data, having every I dotted, every T crossed versus instinct and intuition. And I think it's different for different people. Some people just dive in. And I think I've been guilty of that sometimes. And then trying to, throw yourself in the deep end and then learn how to swim. I think I'm getting better at not doing that now because it takes a long time to learn how to swim sometimes. And it always takes longer than you think it's going to.
I mean, look, I'd say for me, like firsthand, I definitely made mistakes.
Yeah.
14 years ago, without a doubt, I made mistakes. I did things the wrong way. Yeah. I took these meandering routes, which didn't make any sense looking back. But sometimes you do have to learn. You just have to go through it yourself. And you look at most of the entrepreneurs out there, they've probably failed at something at some point because you do learn a lot from your failures. So I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. You learn a lot from them. And so you look at a lot of the founders that actually raise capital from investors, they might have actually been doing a business, bootstrapping it already for a few years. They might have done something and failed. And then they come back and they try and raise money. And actually, investors can see that. Oh, as long as you've got a growth mindset and you can learn from those mistakes, you will become better. And I think that's the difference between those who can raise external capital and those that can't, is the investor can see that this person is able to learn. And that's why you find a lot of people that do raise money, it's maybe not their first entrepreneurial gig or startup. It's the later ones when they start to actually raise significant amounts of capital.
How have you found working with investors versus working with just your co-founder and you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different, right?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you take money from someone, they are a stakeholder in your business. And I would say it also depends on your personality. I do certainly think about it a lot. If somebody has provided me, either they've invested in a business or they've lent capital to that business, I do feel obligated. I've got to get it back to you. I've got to get, a decent return on that. So that's something that people have to be prepared for. The pressure ramps up significantly. When you bootstrap a business, it's also scary because you might have irregular income every month. Some months you could be making, 5 figures or 6 figures, others nothing. And that could go on for months. And that could be quite scary, But at least if you're bootstrapping it, you probably haven't taken on a lot of other risk. It's just your own savings risk in essence. But once you start to raise from investors, the stakes go up, and then there's raising from angels, which is just individuals like you and I. And then there's raising from institutional investors or potentially even listed companies and corporates. The stakes go up significantly.
What are the difference between the three? And I, the reason I ask, just so you know, after 2 decades at corporate, I didn't want to report to anyone. I had had enough of doing what the company thought was in the short-term best interest of the shareholders.
Yeah.
Rather than in the long-term interest of the business.
Yeah.
And so when I left, one of the things in the back of my mind was, I don't ever want to have to justify what I'm doing to anyone. But the longer I've been on this journey, I've kind of realized that maybe there is a role for investing or getting someone to invest in the business to help me scale it faster. Cash flow can become tight. you've got opportunities, but you can't fund them with existing cash, and maybe you're missing out. So I'm just curious, you mentioned angel investors, institutional investors. What's the difference you've seen?
Yeah, so I think that one thing I also learned as being an entrepreneur is even though there's always somebody who's kind of like a boss, right? It could be your biggest client. It could be your external investor.
Interesting.
But there's always someone that you do have to report to in some way.
In some way, yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, you're right. It may not be a direct manager, but if it's your biggest client, you've got to look after that relationship, and they might treat you in different ways. So I always think that there's always going to be somebody there, whether it's your direct line manager, an investor, or it's a client. In terms of different types of investors, yeah, no, angel investors obviously could be any individual like us, could be an entrepreneur, might not be. You're typically going to make a smaller investment, anywhere from sort of typically like 10 to 50,000 US dollars or so is sort of the going rate for an angel. One level up from that is, the more sort of institutional investors, which could be venture capital funds everyone hears about. These are professional investing organizations. They're typically investing, 100,000 to 1 million or 10 million or beyond into a company, right? And so the stakes go up. There's a lot more due diligence. You have to go through a lot more legals. Whereas with angels, things can move a lot quicker. And traditionally, an angel you might have a warm relationship with.
More of a mentor.
You might know them somehow, right? Through friends or family, or you work with them. Whereas VCs, it might be a little bit harder to have that relationship. And then I guess, above that, you've got like your listed companies where they'll have their corporate venture arms as well.
Yeah.
And, they could be acquiring businesses and they could be making, $100 million or larger investments. So those are probably the three different types of investors as we see them.
And the reporting requirements as the founder change dramatically as you move from one to the other.
Once you get to a listed company, there's so much work that goes into it.
I mean, this is part of the problem is I feel like when you work in a listed company, you spend 80%, 90% of your time doing reports and only 10% of your time actually focused on the business, which is why I left.
Yeah. And as you said, we were looking into the share price rather than actually the business itself, which is what it should be about.
Yeah. So you start a business and you normally have a short sort of honeymoon period, even if it's just in your head. And then reality hits. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, how do you know when to lean in, when to pivot, and when to say, okay, this is enough. I need to make the difficult decision, close this down and move on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm going to talk about my failure.
Yeah.
Great. So the failure that I had was actually a co-working space.
Yep.
It was a co-working space.
Not an easy business.
It's not an easy business.
It's not an easy business.
She's like,
thank you for your support.
Go to co-working spaces. They're great. I'd seen an opportunity about 10 years ago, and I said, okay, I found this. I was renting an office, and then the landlord I had another sort of space in the same building in Sheungwan. And I could see there was an opportunity to create a co-working space aimed at the early stage entrepreneur. So that's 0 to 1, 0 to 2, costs are tight. You just want to have somewhere to work from. You don't have to always be at home, ideally around other entrepreneurs. And maybe there could even be a little bit of capital that comes afterwards, right? And so we created this no-frills co-working space called Tyros. Tyro is a young starter individual in ancient Greece. And so we created this with a co-founder, and we got full occupancy. It was great. It was a no-frills space. It wasn't anything as beautiful as this, but we got full occupancy. And, there was a lot of different entrepreneurs in there, and that was great. And then about, 3 months after we got full occupancy, WeWork opened down the road. And, they had this beautiful office, water features, beautiful hanging gardens, and they were charging less per desk than what we were charging. Now, obviously, with hindsight, the reason is the economics never made sense. They had cheap private equity money, and they were spending $2 to make $1. And the idea was to blow the competition out of the water, which wasn't sustainable. But obviously, for a small, basically bootstrapped co-working space like us, we couldn't survive. So we lost most of the entrepreneurs that we had. And then after not too long, maybe six or 9 months or so, we shut it down, liquidated the assets, and that was the learning for us. And I guess the learning was maybe for that kind of business, maybe in a sense it was almost too small. Maybe I needed a bit more scale, so I could have had a bit more economies of scale to get the price down. But also just timing. WeWork then entered that field. They were very well funded. And that was their model, was to go out there and basically undercut the competition, have a beautiful office, no doubt. And you get why people would take it. So I think that we identified it and we shut it down. I would have probably shut it down 4 or 5 months sooner. on reflection,
With hindsight,
would have saved a little bit of that capital there.
It's not easy though. It's
Hard
easy.
to know because we all have ego, we all have
Yeah.
pride, right? And it's hard to say, I failed. You have to deal with that internally. You have to speak to people externally, and that is hard to deal with. And I guess I was lucky that it wasn't the only business I had at that time. I did have 2 other businesses at that time which were profitable. So that helped to soften the blow. But yeah, that was a real learning. I moved into basically something that wasn't recruitment and it did fail. But again, if it count as a silver lining, the 2 of the guys that were in that office, one ended up becoming my co-founder at Zettle, and the other one ended up becoming the CTO. So even though that was a failure, something good eventually came from it.
And there was an intentionality around that, wasn't there? Because I heard you speaking to someone else talking about how you got to know the people in the co-working space,
Exactly.
you spoke to them.
Yeah, so basically the idea, what we did in the end is when we liquidated the assets, we had a little bit of cash left over. We basically just made some investments in some of the founders that had been there, just made a few bets in these companies. And in the end, although it wasn't direct, one of those ended up becoming Zettle, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was something good that came from that as a learning, I guess.
And you talked about earlier, you mentioned cutting your way to profitability.
Yeah.
Which business was that in, and what did that look like?
That was Zettle. So we had a bit of a horror story. So about 3.5 years ago, we had a term sheet from a venture capital firm. Pretty decent valuation and amount of capital, and it was just as interest rates were at their peak. And so we signed the term sheet, hoping that the funds would arrive, and they never did. And actually, the firm ended up closing. And so we ended up in a situation where it was peak interest rates. We had kind of been banking on this money to come in to allow us to scale. And very soon we were looking at the business. We had a monthly burn, which meant that it was costing money every month. And if we couldn't raise that capital, we would close, right? And we knew that it was going to be extremely hard to raise money at that period. So 2023 was a tough year. And we made the decision that we would have to cut costs out of necessity to get to cash flow break even, to give us that runway so we could maybe raise more capital later. And so, yeah, we went from, I think we had about 13 headcount at that time. And then over a period of time, we got that down to 3 by bringing in all these automations. So we did, it's a bit technical. We had things called open banking APIs. We had automatic collections. We had integrations with accounting software. We built all these different cool tools that allowed us to basically be a 3-man team that was acting like a 30-man team, able to cover 3 different geographies in Asia. And as a fintech, you can do that. We had a license, but it's not the same as a bank, which has a lot of regulatory scrutiny. But yeah, that was it came out of necessity because of what had occurred, that we were like, okay, we have to do this. And actually then in the end, it was the best thing we did, because we did get to cash flow break even the next year and then profitability by the year afterwards. But, it was tough, it was hard. And 2023 in particular was a tough year.
Takes it out of you.
Yeah. I mean, I had hair when I started. I had hair when I started my first company. It wasn't on my beard; it was on my head.
I think it's one of the biggest things that you learn in entrepreneurship. And the last guest we had on, Fai Chan, was talking about how after moving from corporate to starting his business, he said, I check my bank balance every single day.
I do as well. Every day.
And he was in this space, and he said, I was checking it just before we got on live. I was just checking to make sure that we were in a healthy position. And I think it's one of those lessons you learn. And funnily enough, we've done a similar thing with one of our businesses where we've actually we've cut headcount in one business by moving it across to another business.
Right.
Which is, I think, the nicest and almost the luckiest way you can deal with it.
Mm-hmm. It shows that you care enough to try and find a solution. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people would just cut and that's it. See you later.
I think that's, honestly, I think that as founders, when we bring people on, we have a responsibility for that. And it's not always possible.
Yeah, I think
it really
you're a bit
isn't.
like me.
It's not always possible, but it doesn't help you sleep at night when you have to make those decisions. What's your advice for early stage founders trying to, scale?
So I would say, first of all, if anybody's looking to be an entrepreneur, what I would first of all say is try and make it a side hustle. Try and do it on the side if you can. Don't necessarily give up your more regular income, because 90% of startups do fail. And only 4% of startups will get to $1 million US in annual recurring revenue. So the chances of succeeding are already stacked against you. So to start off as a side hustle allows you to kind of test your ideas out, understand what works, what doesn't work. And if for whatever reason it fails catastrophically, it's not going to affect your life too much. You know, I think what some people do is they just go, I'm fed up, hand in their notice, and then just go and build that business without maybe a clear plan. And that can be a big risk because most of them do fail. But I would say that starting off bootstrapping is good because you can just learn about how you run a business. You know, you can read all the books, you can have a coach, you know, you can go to seminars, and that's probably a good idea. But sometimes you just have to do it. You just have to go and you have to build and you have to maybe succeed and maybe fail, but you'll learn from that. So that's the first thing I would say. Obviously, minimize costs as much as you can. Don't go and spend a fortune taking out a nice office, right? Try and manage a hot desk initially. Keep your costs low. Utilize some of the neobanks that are out there that have lower fees.
So find a good co-working space.
Great for co-working space. Maybe one in Quarry Bay would be a good idea with wonderful views of the harbor. Keep your costs low and just try and get revenue in, right? Get a bit of success. And I think once you've got your own thing and you've got that first win under your belt, people will hear that and they'll see that. And then you start to build your track record. And then if you're successful doing that yourself a number of times, then you think, okay, maybe I should really do something with this. And then maybe you take the plunge.
Yeah.
I would say that, look, for me personally, I've always had co-founders because I like to work with others. And normally I can find a compromise. For others, they might want to be a solopreneur, and that's completely fine. But try and identify what that is for you as well. And I would say that once you've seen that there's something that's got real legs, that there is revenue coming in, there is success there, or clients asking you to provide the service to them, that's then when you perhaps take the plunge and do it. But the truth is, I think that with AI in particular, we're entering an age of entrepreneurship. It's never been easier to set up a business. You can have an idea, you can give a few prompts, and you can actually create an MVP within a day, theoretically, right? And so it's been easier than ever to test ideas out and get them out there. Minimum viable product, right? So just the basic business idea that will work and ideally will generate some revenue. So it's easier than ever to do that. And I actually think that over the next few years, AI is going to have an impact on jobs, no doubt. It's going to create new jobs. It's going to eliminate some jobs too. And I think that particularly the younger generation, Gen Z, they already are starting to see this, but you're going to have to be prepared to have maybe multiple streams of income. Everyone talks about this, right? Passive income, trying to find ways to generate it. But the truth is, I think people are going to have to think about that. There might be a main job that is the main source of income. Then maybe you have a side hustle. Then maybe you're trading on stocks or real estate or whatever it is, or you're assisting with an e-commerce business. I think a lot of people are going to have to be prepared for a world where they need to do that. And obviously I've got a few, I know you've got a couple of businesses too. I think a lot of people are going to start to look like that. They're going to have lots of different businesses and sources of income. And that's probably what I would advise people is be prepared for that, because it's kind of already here, but it's only going to accelerate over the next few years. So it's a great opportunity. But again, for 90% of those companies, they may not succeed as well.
I think that's brilliant advice. And honestly, this is why we host these discussions, because I think that there are not a lot of discussions out there that are relatable to startup founders. We get online and we listen to podcasts and we listen to the Google founders and the CEOs of Uber and things like that, and they're great. But I think that kind of advice is massively valuable, and I really appreciate you sharing that, Mark. You've exited a couple of businesses. Can I ask, was it the plan to build and sell, or was it the plan to just build and then the sale happened?
I think that, again, this is the difference between entrepreneurship and startups. With startups, when you're raising external capital, you do have to have a plan for how you're going to exit, because the investors are coming into it with the intention that they will be an exit and they'll get their money out. So you have to, and actually all the investors will ask that of you. But okay, what's your 5-year plan, your 7-year plan? Are you going to be listing this company? Are you expecting an M&A with a larger organization? What's going to happen here? So I think for startups, yes. I think for entrepreneurship, you don't have to. You can just build a business because you see an opportunity for it. And if it generates money, great. And, people have something called a lifestyle business, which is in essence, a lifestyle business generates enough income to make you comfortable in your life. And actually, in many respects, that is less stressful. You just generate enough to live a good life, to provide for your family, to have a bit of, work-life balance or integration, depending on what you want to call it. I think that's great as well. And that's kind of what I had for the first few years, and I would say that perhaps there was less pressure at that time, looking back on it now. So I think that that's probably also something to keep in mind.
So when you started your first couple of businesses that you were bootstrapping, they were not started with the intention of an exit.
Probably not, no.
But once you took investor...
So what I learned in recruitment, for example,
Yeah.
so a lot of people will set up a recruitment company because it's easy to start. But if you want to sell it, what I learned over a few years is that your valuation is really affected by the monthly recurring revenue. So most recruitment firms will do what's called permanent recruitment. They'll charge a fee when you hire somebody. It could be a 25% fee of the salary of that person. And it's a one-off fee paid once that person starts. But actually the best recurring revenue is, again, contractors, right? When you hire them and then they're contracted out to other firms. That looks really good in your books. And so with a permanent recruitment firm, you're going to, if you sell it, if you're lucky enough to sell it, you're going to get sort of a 3 times EBITDA valuation. But if you've got a contractor book, it could be double or even higher.
Yeah, that makes sense now. I've heard you say it before, but it's just the penny's just kind of dropped. It's
That's
it's the recurring revenue.
Correct. Because the issue
that
is
you get from the contractor book.
with a permanent book, it's all about the consultant's relationships.
Yeah.
And if that consultant left, that could be the end of the business. Whereas with the contractors, even if the consultant left, you should be able to replace them and maintain that relationship. And that's why they look for this so much.
It's almost like the contractor book keeps the lights on.
Yeah.
And then everything else is a bonus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You top it up with the perm. And contracting's become even more commonplace now than when it was 14 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, and it's no different in a co-working space, because for us, it's the hot desks, the dedicated desks, and the private offices that are the recurring revenue.
Right.
And then the event revenue that we have every month is kind of the bonus on the top.
Exactly.
Interesting. Really interesting. So for someone looking for investment, what advice do you have for someone who's going out there with a business and looking to get someone to invest in their idea and their business?
I would say that ideally they're not a first-time founder. That's the first thing. Ideally they've been there and they've done it, whether it's bootstrapped or they were part of another startup perhaps. I think that's very valuable because investors are a lot more conservative these days. They don't want to invest in early stage companies the way that they used to. When we had the ZIRP era, zero interest rate period, so capital was a lot cheaper to access. And so people were willing to take more risk, but it's the opposite now. So I'd say ideally you're not a first time founder, or you can find somebody else to be a co-founder that is, has had previous experience. That's going to help you. Obviously, I do research into your markets. I do primary research as well as secondary. Primary, obviously, go out there and try and speak to people in that space. Understand what it is. Write a business plan. What is your revenue model going to look like? The SWOT analysis, as they call it. And then also try and find a niche or a vertical that you can, with your expertise and your network, get some control on. Basically, you create a foundation, and then from that foundation, you can do all the things that come afterwards. And that could end up being quite significant. So I'd say keep that in mind. And yeah, obviously learning, you've got to read a lot. You've got to, listen to either podcasts or coaches or go to seminars. You do need to learn about stuff before you get into it. Because that's going to be your grounding for whenever things occur. And yeah, be prepared for the fact that it is very stressful. You need to have support from your family. I'm very lucky that I have that, with my partner, Aisha. You need to have that. You need support from your family, because when you go from earning in a full-time role, and it could be a really high salary with a lot of benefits and medical and school fees, and then you go to be an entrepreneur and maybe it stops completely, that's a huge, huge risk, and you've got to really be prepared for that, especially in a city like Hong Kong, which is incredibly expensive.
Do you know when it hit me? When I lost my diamond card on Cathay Pacific. Went to book my flight to Vietnam.
Such a first world problem.
Yeah, I know, but that was corporate, right? That was corporate, and you're there. And then I get to the airport and I book my flight to Vietnam on Vietnam Airlines, and there isn't even a bridge to the plane. Yeah. And it's raining like it is today. Yeah. And they actually handed me a plastic raincoat to put over my head to board the bus and go up the steps.
Oh, no.
And I'm kind of sitting there thinking,
what have I done?
What have I done?
Yeah, I feel that.
I've actually got that photo on LinkedIn if anyone wants to go back and look back. And it's quite an old one, but I was like, took a selfie of myself standing there in this raincoat in the pouring rain on the tarmac thinking, yeah, life has changed. I wouldn't go back. Yeah. I wouldn't go back. And for someone looking to sell, selling a business requires, I think, a slightly different approach to the way that you structure things internally, the way that you position your business, the books, the way you keep your records, all of that kind of stuff. Any advice?
Yeah, I'd say, again, something I learned firsthand, you need to keep all of your information up to date. You need your management accounts, your profit and loss statement, all of that's got to be up to date. You need your audits all up to date. Don't let anything slack or fall behind, because they're going to go and do due diligence and a deep dive on everything. That's important. The next thing is be prepared that it's going to take a lot longer than you expect. Everything takes so much longer than you expect. You think you're done next week, it's probably going to be 6 months or even a year down the line. There's all sorts of things that creep up and issues that get in the way. And you need to be prepared for that. And certainly that's something for me, it's just the finishing line just feels like it's further and further and further ahead of you. So you need to be ready for that, for sure. And you have to think, what is it that they're going to be acquiring? If it's a recruitment company, typically they're acquiring the consultants in the business.
It's the people.
It's the people. And so there might be a lock-in, you might be locked in for 24, even 36 months to that organization. And, if you sell to them and it doesn't work out, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You just got to put up with it for those 3 years. And then you end up in a situation where maybe you're working for a boss you don't want to. So I think that, people need to really think about all of those decisions, ahead of time. But of course, then there are those companies. Yeah, you mentioned the Ubers, there's Google. There's companies that obviously go there and they just have incredible valuations, but a lot of that is concentrated in the US. I think Hong Kong, as amazing a city as Hong Kong is, it is different. It's not done the same way as how business is done in Silicon Valley.
Nothing is though, is it?
Yeah, nothing in the world really is like that at the
yeah.
moment. Everything is so concentrated there.
Yeah.
So you also have to be prepared for that. It's not going to be like a lot of the TV shows and movies that we see.
Yeah. To do as much as you do, I'm guessing that you have people around you, but you said it earlier, with AI, you possibly don't need as much headcount as you did in the past. What roles do you still hire for today, or what roles do you still think are crucial in your businesses?
I think in terms of what roles we are seeing emerging now, and particularly AI-based roles, so there's AI engineers. There's what's called a forward deployed engineer, which is basically like an AI engineer that goes into other companies, like a contractor, fiber optic technicians, and basically anybody involved in data centers. These areas are booming, and that's not going to change, because if you look at the amount of compute power that we need right now, it's going to take us years to get to what the requirements are now. And that's only going to accelerate over the next few years. So anything involved in those industries, there's going to be huge demand still. Then you've got industries that are kind of like AI resistant. So things like healthcare, where you're not going to trust an AI to do anything involved in healthcare for many, many years, if not decades, if ever. Obviously, blue collar workers, trade skills, super valuable. But then also like in person, anything to do with real events, where you can tangibly meet other people, hosting events like this. In an age where you can't trust what you see on a screen anymore, when there could be an avatar, right, talking to you, what do you value more than ever? It's people you can actually see that are real, relationships like that you value. And I think that, obviously events has always been around, but actually I think events are still going to be more important over the next few years, because people are going to want to have that kind of connection. So I think all of these kind of sectors, they're going to be active for a while. Conversely, that the knowledge industries, things that an AI can analyze data sets on, and then basically do the analysis for that, which can be financial services, it can be in legal, a few other industries. Those are the jobs you're seeing get affected. Even software engineers that are coding. Yeah. Those are the industries that we're seeing those jobs kind of being wiped out.
Okay. What do you look for in the people you hire? You've been around the recruitment space for a long, long time. And I'm curious, because you've obviously seen a lot being in this industry.
For me personally, most of the people that I hire or work with, they tend to have been entrepreneurs already. So one trait, I look at all the companies and everyone I've worked in, apart from my first business, but all the other companies I've been involved in, it's been with people that were entrepreneurs. And I think I like the fact that I know that they've been there and they've done this. They've already kind of had their eyes opened to how much fun and joy it could be, and also all the struggles that come with that. And so I think I look for that in other individuals. Yeah. And that's an important one for me. And of course, people that are able to work well in a team. It's I do value that highly. I like people to be like a collegial environment, they call it. We all collaborate. Everyone's input is valuable. So that's also part of what I look for. So people that aren't afraid to maybe voice their opinions, Even an intern, actually, they're going to be bringing in all sorts of different ideas. And that's useful. And the idea is that you create a space where we want to hear those ideas. Don't be ashamed. Don't be shy. That's also then quite important.
Okay. There's a lot of noise around AI. And I'm just curious, as for founders, knowledge workers, parents, job seekers, what do you think they need to know?
So I was actually I was in South Island School on Friday.
Okay.
I was at a careers fair there.
Okay.
And I was literally what I was doing. I was there with all these year 12s. I was an alumni, right?
Yeah.
So I'm there with all these year 12s. And I'm just asking them, like, what do you guys want to do? And one of the concerns from a lot of them was, are we going to have jobs after university? Like when I graduate in 4 years' time, is there still going to be a pathway for me to become a partner in a law firm? Or are all those entry-level jobs going to be eliminated? And I think it is quite scary for parents right now, because what we see in the news is this narrative of AI job destruction, right? You see that Oracle sacked 30,000 people. We see Amazon got rid of 20,000. What you don't hear as much about is that Oracle hired back 8,000 of those workers a month later, but without benefits. What you don't hear is that Meta has now changed its policy and realized they've overfired and have hired back 7,000. These organizations have kind of reacted quickly and fired people because they probably overhired during COVID, and when it was low interest rate environments, these companies borrowed capital and they overhired. There was all these subsidies in place. So what they were really waiting for was an excuse to cut back their headcount. And that's kind of been going on for the last 4 months. Now we're starting to see a backlash, right? So even Sam Altman of OpenAI, he came out 2 weeks ago and he said that the AI jobs apocalypse is not going to happen. Or at least it's not going to happen anytime soon. He came out and said that.
Okay, because he'd said it was going to happen.
They were the ones, the doomsayers.
They were the ones, right.
But you have to understand, right? These AI companies are trying to increase the valuation of their businesses and they want everybody to use it. So they are incentivized to spread this news for everyone. Right. But actually what they realize is, although there is going to be an impact, it's going to take so many more years than we anticipated. And there's going to be new jobs created and there's going to be a whole growth in entrepreneurship. So yes, maybe overall there will be a lot of jobs that are cut, but like with every new technology throughout history, new roles are created. And in the moment we can't see it, but when we look back on it, we realize, oh, these were the new changes in our industry. So I think people need to be prepared for, yes, there's been a lot of fear mongering, but actually I do think the tide is starting to turn. And if Sam Altman of OpenAI is saying this, then that means all the other labs are going to be saying this soon too. And people should still try and be optimistic. Obviously AI, there's university colleges, when people talk about AI, they're getting booed now. Right?
I saw that.
Recently. Like people are getting booed on stage, right? Because a lot of graduates are frustrated about it. And that shouldn't be the case. We should all be utilizing it. We are all going to have to be in the race. We're going to have to use these tools because the idea is your output now can be the output of 2 or 3 people. And so you kind of have to do this. So don't be afraid of it. Just use these tools. Now, it's difficult because in the school, when I was asking them, they said, our teachers say we're not allowed to use these. And I was like, okay, I probably should tell you to use them. But I said, as soon as you get to uni, use them. Just try and build things, iterate, create, even if it's just a passion project, something that you love that's never going to make money. Show that you know how to conceptualize something, build it, and manage it, because that skill set's going to be valuable for you in your careers. What are people going to value more than anything? It's critical thinking. The ability to be critical thinking, the ability to network, to communicate efficiently, and the ones that are utilizing these tools. They will be the ones that will still get employed and hired and all will succeed in their own businesses.
There's 2 things you said there that jump out at me. And one is, and I often use the analogy of the pendulum, that the pendulum swings from from one side to the other, but then it normally comes back somewhere towards the middle. And I feel like that's kind of where we are with AI. And it's reassuring to hear that sort of, because I think when someone like Sam Altman says something, people lean in. And so, a while ago, when there was this doomsday scenario, everyone was talking about it largely because Sam Altman was talking about it. And so if he's moved his position, I think that's super helpful. The other thing that I find really interesting is the way that you frame AI as a tool, because that's how I kind of think about it. It's like, rather than thinking about, can I replace these people with AI? It's like, how can we get more productive using these people and getting them to use AI so we can scale faster? And they can do less of the crap that they're doing and actually focus on building the business rather than ticking boxes and the admin and all of that kind of stuff.
And this is why entrepreneurship becomes very powerful, because a lot of that then is done by the AI. A lot of the boring, repetitive, time-laborious tasks are done by AI, so you can focus on winning new customers or managing your team or coming up with a new strategy or whatever it is. And so that's what's really powerful. And yes, I think you do see some companies that are coming out and saying this now. It just augments what we have. We're giving our team new tools so they can be hyper efficient. And it's sort of a bit of a backlash to what you're seeing. And to be honest with you, most of that was US technology companies. If you actually look at it, the narrative was mainly US technology companies. I think even China came out a couple of weeks ago and they said that the tech companies in China cannot fire somebody because of AI.
Yeah.
Right. So a guy actually won a court case about this, saying because they'd fired him because they said his job had been automated out. And actually the Chinese government said, you can't do that anymore. Now, obviously, that's just for Chinese companies, but there is a backlash that's been emerging already. Yeah. And we're going to see more of it.
So you've got all this going on, but you have a family?
I do. My wife's here in the audience today.
She's behind you, so she can't. She's not looking. She's not looking at you. Alignment, balance, integration. There's so many different words used. How do you manage this, and how do you think about it?
So I read about work-life integration about 20 years ago. That was when it was kind of first emerging as a trend. And when I set up my first business 14 years ago, I wanted to use that immediately. So the way that my day looks like, I do get a lot of work hours into a day. I'm probably at least 12 hours a day of work, plus I'm getting enough sleep at nights. Yeah. It is a lot, but I'm also getting time with my family. And so what that means is, obviously, when I wake up, I don't even touch my phone. I don't look at my emails, don't look at my messages. I just spend an hour with my family. I've got a young son and I'm my wife. I just spend time with them for that first hour. Then I'll start to check all the messages and I'm reacting and I'm dealing with that all the way through. I go to the gym pretty much every day at lunch. Now, when I'm at the gym, yes, I'm probably still responding to things that people need me, right? So I'm doing something I need to do for my physical health, but I'm also still kind of working. And then in the afternoon, I'll also work, but I'll be home by like 5. And then I spend time with my son. I'll spend like 3 hours with my kid every day on a weekday. And, if I'm getting 4 or 5 hours a day with him on a weekday in Hong Kong, that is so rare, to get with a kid. I know I'm very lucky to get that. And then again, when he's down, I'm working again, for a few hours. So it is hard work. It has to be. And I could probably put in even more hours. I think where it becomes a struggle is on the weekends, because it is very hard to completely switch off. I will try and spend as much of the weekend as possible just with my family and being present. But yeah, if I see emails that are coming in on the weekend, sometimes I can't help myself. And I do reply. And that's what I mean. It's like there's not just work and personal time. The two have become entwined. And does that mean I burn out more? I don't think so anymore. I think that because I try and get enough sleep, I eat well, drink a lot of water, meditate, go to the gym, all of that helps to manage it. And I still feel like I'm getting quality time in with my family. But yeah, there's a lot of hours in the day. I guess if it was one business, I think it would still be as many hours because you would just be doing that for that business.
Yeah. It's important to have an understanding partner because you can switch off your mobile phone, you can put it away, but you can't switch off what's going on in your head.
Exactly.
It's there. Exactly. It's constantly there.
And look, sometimes you get a bad message on a Friday and it does affect your weekend, right? Yeah. It does affect your weekend, even if you can't deal with it until Monday.
Yeah. Do you have a framework around this for sort of optimizing your productivity and health? I know you talked about your kind of routine a little bit there, but is there anything else that sort of in terms of a framework that you think about?
I mean, well, work-wise, I follow the lean startup methodology, right, which is Eric Riez, and his is all about sort of, fail fast, iterate, and pivot. That's like his methodology. Yep. And that's very much from a work perspective. And I guess from personal side, work-life integration, as I mentioned, just trying to get the two of those so that I can still get all of that into my day and into my week. And I think my wife would agree that probably doing okay with that at home.
She's nodding.
She's nodding, right? Okay. But yeah, I think that's really what it comes. Those are probably the two philosophies I have for the work and then for how I try and manage the two.
Okay, amazing. Guys, we'll throw it open for Q&A for a few minutes and then I'll come back with a final question or two. Does anyone have a question that they want to ask?
Yeah, Mark, thank you so much for your great input today and providing a lot of information to think of. I wrote it down to check it out later. And my question, I have a small kind of like startup business around 12, 15 people. And now we are kind of preparing to scale up. And I saw that one of the topic for today is scaling up your business. That's why I came. And what is your advice, right, for this kind of companies? If I'm considering scaling up, where or how should I start? Should I hire more salespeople or more productive people, or maybe hire HR person who can help me to find kind of like suitable people for future growth?
If I ask what you're doing, what the business
Education, online English school education.
Online education.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess the question is, what would you need, to obviously scale that business up, right? Is it that you need to have more educators, that you can run more classes, or is you looking to sort of win more accounts? I guess that's the question that comes to it. Obviously, you probably utilized already some AI agents to do the cold outreach, I'm guessing. That's probably one way you could do that without having to hire straight off the bat. But again, cold outreach, really low chances of conversion, right? You're looking at sort of like maybe 10% or less for cold outreach. So then if it's a case of warm outreach, obviously you just have to have an ROI on that, right? What is it going to look like? Each individual you hire, I'm sure you've broken it down, the costs in the organization from that. I do believe that warm introductions are far more valuable. And if you bring somebody in that's going to open up and have a 50% success rate, that's going to really augment your business, right? And I'm guessing you've obviously got tech that can also streamline what you have in place then. So in terms of finding individuals, I would say, like, how have you found them in the past? Was it from your own networks? Did you hire them from schools? Maybe see if there's any patterns in the headcount that you have, and then obviously try and replicate that. So actually what we do preferred is we try and give you the opportunity to build a team without having to pay a large recruitment fee, actually. So there might even be something we could partner with there and trying to help you grow that business. But yeah, obviously if you're overseas as well, I mean, you've got a huge potential. 15 is a good headcount, I would say. It sounds like you've built a solid business there. But yeah, we should definitely connect afterwards. I'd love to have a longer chat with you about that.
Thank you so much for all your advice. I'm a first-time entrepreneur, so definitely lots of really good advice there. I am curious about your thoughts on AI and its growth versus the resources that, like the material resources that data centers need. And I know that, there are AI models in different parts of the world, like in Asia or China, really the infrastructure is very different from, let's say, the US. Like, what are your thoughts on the growth trajectory of like us using AI as a tool versus the reality of like limited resources that we have?
First of all, congratulations. Do you mind if I ask, what are you going to be doing, your business? Do you know yet?
Yeah, I am working on a game with a sort of as a way for people to participate in microfinancing. I have no idea really what that truly looks like yet. I'm researching, but yeah, we'll see.
Okay. First of all, we should also connect afterwards to talk about microfinancing and lending. We never did any consumer lending at Zettle. We did only B2B lending, but I know a lot of other people in that space, so we should chat about that. In terms of sort of, the AI and the, I mean, look, obviously for us, we've looked at both US and Chinese models and labs, because the truth is the Chinese labs, they are more affordable. Every time you do an inference, which is when you use AI, there's token costs involved in that, and the Chinese labs are significantly cheaper. So I think ByteDance just released Seed Dance recently, which is their new model for animation. And look, they're so much more powerful, and they're getting cheaper and cheaper. Whereas if you use, say, Gemini, which is Google's one, the costs are a lot more significant. So there is something to be had for that. I think, again, it depends on if you look a few steps down the line, what is it you're going to do later? If you are thinking about maybe setting up a startup and you're going to raise external capital, if you want to raise money from US investors and you're building on top of Chinese labs, LLMs, then you're probably not going to pass due diligence. So that's maybe one thing to keep in mind, at least in the current climate. That could change later. So I guess that's one thing, is do you need to raise startup capital? But yeah, again, building games, you can do that, right? A lot of these tools are out there. You can actually get it to build the MVP for you with a few good prompts. So I think, if you're trying to create financial literacy with the microfinancing, I'm not sure if that's the goal, but I would say utilize some labs now, test out the idea, and then just build it on your own for now. And then later on, obviously you can take that kind of rubric, that information, and then you can build it with another lab if you decide you want to go down that route. But yeah, I would say at this early stage, try and find one of the cheaper models that are out there, which is also going to be suitable for you, because different models are better at video generation or natural language processing or development of games. So find the one that's best for that. I actually don't know which one is the best for games, but that's something worth finding out.
You've mentioned, your passion for building.
Yeah.
And I know you like to not build alone and build with other people. In your experience, what have all the different various businesses you've built taught you about leadership and the importance of culture when building your team?
Question. Yeah, look, I'm definitely one of those individuals that wants to sort of pull people forward, right? I like to sort of lead by example. I'll get in there, I'll get my hands dirty. I've got no shame being involved in anything that needs to be done in an office. I want people to see that I'm not just trying to dictate terms to them. So there's definitely more of a collaborative nature in how I run these businesses. Again, when you have co-founders, again, there's a dynamic there, right? I'm a CEO in preferred, so technically I'm more senior, but I have got co-founders as well, and I respect them. And they might be older, they might be more experienced than you. And so you do have to balance that dynamic. But I think if people can see that you're consistent, that you make good decisions, or you're willing to listen to others, and from there make the right decision based on that consensus, then they will, over time, they'll respect you. And I do think you need to have a bit of compassion as well, right? We've all had the boss that was effing and blinding and screaming, and it's just, it doesn't help anybody, right? And I think that I certainly didn't want to be that way with other individuals. And of course, your personality does come through, but again, you can learn as well, how to negotiate, how to find compromise, how to deal with different personality types, right? There's audio, visual, kinesthetic learners. They all have different ways. Then you have neurodivergent people as well. And so I think that you need to be understanding of all of these different individuals and how you manage them. So I'd say, yeah, look, trying to be collaborative, but at the same time, being able to make decisions efficiently as well, based upon that. And yeah, eventually the buck probably does stop with you. You have to make that decision. But if your decision is the wrong one, the critical thing is to be able to acknowledge that and iterate and pivot. And that's sometimes where a lot of people get caught up.
Yeah, you don't always get it right.
You don't always get it right. And that's the thing, you're probably going to make the wrong decision. But instead of being stubborn and just continuing on that path, you have to accept this isn't working. You were right. Let's go and adjust. And in marriage sometimes too.
Wife, one of our marriage phrases, it's not about being right, it's about getting it right.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing your experiences. Definitely a lot of learning there. My question is, if you were to advise an early founder who was going to make their first hire, would you recommend hiring someone who will accelerate the business? Or would you recommend hiring someone who has a lot of potential and would help you, will grow along with the business, basically?
Again, I think both obviously have their merits. One is obviously your relationship with them, right? And what I'd say to people is the first hire you make in a business is so critical. And sometimes businesses can die out because of the wrong hire. So what I would say is you've got to spend time to really get to know them. So you've got to meet them multiple times. For example, with my preferred co-founder, I think we spent 6 months just meeting, coffees, lunch, drinks, just getting to know each other, because I knew that there was going to be times when we would have a disagreement and we would have to be able to find a way to negotiate and compromise. And so I didn't rush into it. So I would say for you, whichever way you go, I can see the merits in either. Take your time, don't rush into it, and meet them multiple times in different settings and see how you vibe with them and see the benefits that would come in. But probably the person that can accelerate the business, if there's a good personality fit, that sounds very valuable. The other individual, perhaps it sounds like there's a little bit more management needed there, a little bit more training needed, which in a very, very early stage company like that could potentially hold you back when you need to be focused on building the business. That's maybe what I would err towards.
I think your personality is also very important in this.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to lead, or do you want to let someone sort of jump in and drive it for you? Because I think there's it's a question that I just think that you probably need to answer that yourself, because we're all built a bit differently.
It has to be a personality fit for the founder and the hire, like you mentioned rightly. because that will decide whether it's going to be like a sounding board or is it going to be like following and leading that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
You speak a lot about co-founders, and every business seems to have had a co-founder of some sort. What is your opinion on hiring a mentor rather than a co-founder?
Yeah. So the other thing I'd say is even if you become a solopreneur, it's very important that you have a network of people that can support you. And so traditionally they can be either the investors if you're taking capital. If you haven't, it's either going to be your peers, so other individuals that run businesses, and it's basically like a support network because there's going to be tough and dark times. But yeah, the other one is, of course, you can have mentors. You know, it could be people you've worked with in the past. They could be official advisors to your company. You might give them some equity as well. I do think there is a place for that. So I've had advisors or mentors in at least 2 of the businesses I've had. Not all of them, actually. When I think
Official
about
or
it.
more unofficial?
Official. I've had
Official,
advisors, yeah. And then I've had maybe 1 unofficial. But I think there's a huge amount of merit in learning from what others have done, right? We're not an island. We do need to learn from others, right? Everything we have is based upon all the information we have leading up to it. So I do think it's hugely important to have some, whether they're official or unofficial, somebody you just see for a beer, once every few weeks and chat to them about.
Particularly if you're a solopreneur,
Yeah.
someone whereupon you've got somebody to be accountable to.
Yeah.
If you're on your own, you have nobody. You can sit in front of the TV or on the sofa, and no one's going to tell you, get up.
Yeah, exactly. Or that motivator, yeah. Checking it daily, that would help.
Actually, I've gone from being a business owner or multiple business owners
Yeah.
to going to now decided I am what do you call it? A solopreneur.
Yeah.
One of the reasons being is because I spend a lot of time traveling and I go to the UK. I've got kids all over the world and kind of want to go and spend. All my kids are grown up.
Okay.
I mean,
So many questions there.
I've got one of my kids who just
Anyone
moved to
got questions
Cyprus
for
for
Joe?
tax reasons.
Are you a sailor?
Yeah, so, something like that. I was a jockey, so I'm not so far off. Actually, my son has just moved to Cyprus for tax reasons.
Wow.
That comes when your 23-year-old son has moved to Cyprus for tax reasons. So I've kind of gone the way of the solo entrepreneur, or whatever you call it. And so I'm actually digging deep into AI at the moment. I'm spending a lot of time looking at it, messing up a lot. I just had one of my I set up an agent to be my PA, and it requested insurance from insurance companies. It actually confirmed that I wanted it and everything without without me even saying yes. I got the bill the other day, and I was like, I think I'm going to stop this now.
Yeah, AI agents, you got to watch out for.
Yeah. So that's kind of going. So any advice on that? Because what I'm looking, I've gone into something totally different to what I was in before. And so I'm looking at reaching out to businesses to work with the businesses from a personal point of view. And I'm a good salesman. That's not my issue. But what I want to do is utilize AI to kind of manage everything else that's around it, apart from kind of
the relationship network.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you can do. I mean, these AI agents that are coming about now, LLMs was one thing, which is basically you put a prompt in and then you have a conversation with the LLM to get answers, a bit like a Google search.
I've done that.
You've done all that.
I want to go above that. I want to go above that.
So AI agents is the next level, right? And so that's what he's talking about. People obviously, they give AI agents access to their banking information, to their stocks trading. Like it's pretty wild.
I mean, I didn't do that because I watched I can't remember her name, a woman who set this all up, and she asked the AI agent to buy her some paper clips. Oh my God, the disaster that happened. like it ordered like 200,000 paper clips, charged it all to a credit card. They'd set it all up so it didn't matter. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a bit careful. Also, then she set up a cup. Oh, she was going to sell a cup. So it designed cups and everything and T-shirts and started selling them. But it started emailing all of her contacts, like including the director of BBC and the things, aggressively saying, buy our fucking cup. Like really getting aggressive because she told it, I want you to sell one by the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it had just gone.
You're a strong salesperson.
Yeah, it just gone over the top.
Yeah.
So I kind of watched that and thought, oh, no, I'm going to back off, particularly when I had that experience. But any advice on how to kind of, I know that I want to continue going that way, and I will need to continue going that way.
Yeah, so I've also been using AI agents, and so I've got multiple different emails for the different companies. So what I've done
That's the
is
same with me. I've got 10 emails.
So I basically integrated an AI into a company email that would not have as much collateral damage if something went wrong, is kind of what I've done.
Yeah.
So kind of learn
That's
with
a
it
good idea.
together. And so it's not in like Preferred or Zettle, it's in another business. And so it's kind of like, it's just something I'm doing on my own, but it's basically working. And I'm trying to get it to do a lot of different like cool things. So it's sort of doing like an SFC scraping algorithm just to analyze the changes in the licenses day by day, sends updates. I've got one that's analyzing the jockey club races and coming up with an algorithm for that to try and make money.
No, there's a guy. No, hold on. There's a young kid out there who's.
When are you going to sell it?
Joking aside, there's a young kid out there who's actually got a system set up that is absolutely.
It's pretty crazy what you can do.
He used Lovable.
Lovable, yeah, that's right.
And so he's now actually set it up on an app, and it's 100% working.
Amazing.
It'll only work in somewhere like Hong Kong because the jockey club, it doesn't matter how much you bet, they take a percentage of it, and the share is split between the winners. You couldn't go and do it; wouldn't be allowed in the UK. It wouldn't work because the UK bookmakers wouldn't. It'd be a whole different ballgame.
But basically, what I'd say is, I'm also using them, and I've got these concerns as well. I've heard about email addresses being completely wiped. The AI will just go through and just delete everything that's in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because sometimes it hallucinates.
Well, that happened with the Facebook woman, didn't it? Where she said, "I'm going to close you down," and it started going.
The CFO, the ex-CFO lady,
yeah.
So I'd say, look, it's something that we've kind of got to use, but these are so emerging, and they do hallucinate.
What do you use?
Problems.
What are you using, or have you written your own?
So the one I'm using for the AI agents is called it's actually Animoca Minds, which is from Animoca Brands. They're actually one of our investors. So it's kind of like we get a bit of a benefit to use this one that they've got. And what theirs does is it's built across multiple LLMs. So depending on what you ask the AI agent to do, it will go to a different one. So it could be Claude, and it could be
can you
OpenAI.
also have it working as a kind of like a sales agent? So it's managing through your, let's say, LinkedIn, through your database.
If you give it the access, it could do all of it. But again, like you said, it could be too aggressive. It could ruin relationships. And so tread with caution. Yeah.
I'd be interested to, because the ones I've tried are not capable of doing what I haven't got to that stage where it's.
I'm still kind of testing them out. I think we're going to have to wait for a couple of models to come out. The next iterations are going to be even more efficient. Yeah.
Can I just say that if LinkedIn found out that we're trying to do that automated, that close down your account because it's not allowed.
Yeah, they would. Yeah.
All right, last question.
Yeah.
Mark, Hong Kong, Asia. Growing up, living here, working here, been an advantage for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love Hong Kong. I've been one of its biggest advocates for years. I think that we've had a tough 6 years from 2019 onwards through COVID, and then post-COVID we thought things would improve, and actually F&B it sunk. It was really hard. But since summer last year, I don't know about you, but I feel it like things have been on the upward ascendancy again. It feels like there's people that are coming back to Hong Kong. I'm hearing of people coming back from Singapore, certainly from the Middle East recently and other parts of the world. They realize just how good Hong Kong is. Obviously the grass always appears greener, but we've got a lot going for us. Obviously the IPO market is booming. Of course, there's a lot of talent coming in from China, but there's capital coming here from elsewhere too. So I think Hong Kong is always going to have issues in the fact that it's a small population base, but it does have that kind of East-West duality, right, between China and the rest of the world. It's a great place to do business, low tax regime. But I'd say if you're looking to raise capital in the early stage, that's a struggle still. There's not a lot of investors who invest in the very early stage. They want to come in your like Series A when you've proven your product market fit and you're ready to scale beyond that. Then you have investors. So it's quite hard in the earliest stages. You know, obviously the Cyberport and the Science Park, but there's not much else out of that. So I'd say that that's one of the disadvantages. But overall, I think there's nowhere else like Hong Kong on earth, right? I say this to people when I'm talking to them from overseas. You know, you can get up, you can watch the sunrise on top of a mountain, go into the city and have a Michelin-starred lunch, and then go and have a dip in the ocean and the beach. And all of those trips are like 10 minutes away from each other.
Yep.
You know, there's nowhere else in the world you can do that. So no, I think it's an amazing city. I'll be here for many, many years.
And that East-West upbringing is invaluable, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
For all of us. Thank you, mate. Incredibly insightful, incredibly articulate as well. And really appreciate the sharing. I'm sure it's going to benefit a lot of people, and I'm sure everyone in the room took a lot away from it.
Hopefully there's some good questions as well.
Oh, thank you.
Let's all connect afterwards, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. That's a wrap, guys.
Hey!
Thank you.
Nice one.
Thank you.
Cheers, Max.
Thank you.
Thank you.